Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily. And for the first time in some time, we're going to be focusing a little more on Batman than we are on Superman, although we do have Superman stuff to talk about today as well. The director of the new Twisters movie has been talking about the casting process for Superman. And, of course, David Corenswet, or new Superman indeed, is also part of the Twisters movie. So, he was talking about how the casting process was like and how they were all excited for David Corenswet as he was going through that with James Gunn and company. And of course, we also have, something important to talk about regarding Will Reeve, him and his cameo in the new Superman movie. He had all the best things in the world to say about that. But before we get into any of that, there is a new poster of Batman Cape Crusader out, which is an animated show coming out on August 1st, and right down across the hall from Batman Cape Crusader came this comment on my feed where Anthony Starr, he plays Homelander in the show The Boys. I'm sure you guys are familiar. If you're not, then go get yourself familiarized. The show's been on for a while. The newest season is on air right now, and so Anthony Starr's been going around, doing Comic Cons and stuff. It's the summer season, and well, he was asked about the character of Batman, and he has some choice words. But before I get into what he said and maybe why those weren't the most prudent things to say, John, I wanted to check in with you. How are you doing? Because my reaction to the comments, Anthony Starr, were pretty guttural. What about you?
I was having a good day until I read those comments. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not quite as bad as Eric Kripke's comments, which we will also get into, but it just makes my head hurt. Even as someone who doesn't prefer Batman to Superman anymore, I'm just kind of.
Mm-hmm. No, hey, I hear
It
you.
makes my head hurt.
I hear you completely. It's something that. Oh, hey, Fiona, I see her in the chat. Let me give her a shout out. There we go. Now that we get that out of the way, here are the comments. Let's put that on screen. So, John, give us a little bit of background on where this comment came from, because I saw this on DC Film News. They did a great job of covering everything DC, and so
Right.
we sometimes like to follow their lead. And the gist of it is that and he starts like, "Hey, I always liked Batman, but then I freaking grew up, and all of a sudden I thought he was just a dude," which is something that, of course, we've heard it before many a times.
Yeah.
Like, he called him a guy running around in a bad outfit with some fancy toys and a chip on his shoulder about money. Okay. Well, let me
Tell
talk to
me
you,
you don't
Anthony.
understand the character of Batman without telling me you don't understand the character of
It's
Batman.
it's what exactly, John, exactly. But let me talk to you. Here's my problem with this. There's lots of people out in the world who hate the character of Batman, and they can trash the character of Batman all they want. That's fine. But when you're a public figure and you go out there and you sit on a Comic Con panel and you then talk shit about one of, if not the most popular comic book character in the world, and probably the highest grossing, was certainly one of the highest grossing comic book characters in the world, one of the most iconic
Yeah.
characters in popular culture, period. And you talk about it with such a superficial level of understanding.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But like, fuck you, dude. Like, what is wrong with Anthony Starr? Because either he's just going for the. I just think Anthony Starr has been living in the role of the boys too long, and now he's just
Pretty
like, you
much.
know what? That show is entirely based on shock value, and then there's a few like sprinkles of good storytelling in there, but outside of that, it's
Yeah.
just all about how can we shock you with something that you would not think we would do in a
He's
show.
been playing Homelander a little bit too long.
A
Let's just
little
go
bit
with
too
that.
long, and to the point where he's now just like he clearly, part of this is he's baiting a little bit the kind of reaction that you're seeing from us, and I totally get that, but I still don't care. I'm just like, this guy does not know what he's talking about, and
Yeah.
it just I'm sure that he drew some eye rolls from the people on stage who actually even asked him the question and were in the audience too. But John, if I had more energy in me today, after a long day, I would have ranted a lot longer. But I know you have some choice words for Anthony Starr's choice words about Batman, because you called it Batman erasure, and I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Putting down that character, it takes away so much from what makes, yes, a normal dude who, goes above and beyond what most normal dudes would be able to do. Granted, he has some resources on his side, but the character of Batman is a lot more than just a dude with a bunch of fancy toys and a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah,
Because,
it's
that would be
very
just any
superficial.
dude who goes to Toys R Us to collect action figures. You could describe him that way. Batman is not that guy. So,
No,
I don't know.
it just
It's
it's just very like, again, it's just like he's just saying it for saying it sake. Like
mhm.
he just wants to like, oh, I'm gonna say this to get people mad. I'm gonna say this to, just get like bait people, blah blah blah. And I guess it worked because we're ranting about it now. But it's just like I say it with all sincerity. Who the fuck are you to say anything about that? Batman is a character that has lived fucking 80 something years. I don't what was it? 1939. That's about 85 years, I think. Um and he will forever be more popular, more interesting, more layered than anything that Eric Kripke or Garth Ennis will ever write. Like, don't get me wrong, Garth Ennis has written a lot of good stuff. But it just the boys came from the comic book, the boys came from Garth Ennis is like, I hate superheroes. I'm gonna write an entire comic book series to show people what I see superheroes, which is fine. Like Garth Ennis has the clout to do that because he has a lot of great like writing behind him for the most part. Um, so I mean, Garth Ennis, it's like it depends how I think he's a pretty good writer. I don't think he's like as amazing as some people say he is, but I don't think he's as like garbage as some people say he is. So I think he's pretty good. I've read some of his stuff, and yeah, like living in a bubble, living, looking down at the peasants type of shit,
Dude, think
and
I
it
went
just
into
like
an AI website just to
yeah,
kind of see if like Dolly or something like that could generate an image for me, where I literally typed in Batman beats up Homelander, and no matter what variation of Batman does some kind of damage to Homelander that I typed in, every time it showed me at no less than two Batmen fighting each other, because none of the AI websites even know who the fuck Homelander is. And
exactly. Yeah, and it just
I'm just,
so that's what the boys came from because Garth Ennis,
yeah,
whenever he writes superheroes that aren't the Punisher, he just like writes them as like either total
yeah.
morons. Like I remember there was like a crossover he did with Punisher, Wolverine, and Spider-Man, and he wrote Spider-Man and Wolverine like famously, he wrote them like terribly. And so it's like, okay, fine. And then you have, but at least Garth Ennis has the clout, the writing, and the intelligence to be like, okay, this is coming from my own point of view. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I still know what I'm talking about because I have enough, experience steeped into superhero media. Eric Kripke is just a guy who wrote a couple like decent shows. Like you wrote CW shows. You wrote NBC cable network shows. It's like, who the fuck are you to say anything? Because he also said some dumbass shit a couple weeks ago. Like, he did the typical thing, like, oh, Batman's a fascist that beats up poor people, which I cannot fucking tell you drives me up the fucking wall. Like, it just makes me want to fucking deck him in the face. Because, again, it's like coming from the idea you don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's like if you don't like these characters, fine. Just be like, I don't like Batman because I just can't get into him. Whether, oh, he's just human, I can't suspend my disbelief, I can't like envision that, fine, whatever. But then there's like the level of ego where you like, oh no, I'm just gonna trash this character where I've like watched Batman 89 fucking 30 years ago and then act like I'm like a fucking expert. It's like, no, no, that's just not true. And you just make yourself look like a complete and utter moron to the people who actually know this character, whether you're writing them, reading them, whatever. You just look like a fucking idiot, whether that's Anthony Starr or Eric Kripke. So it's just like, oh, he's just a guy. It's like, yeah, that's kind of the point. Like, he is just a guy, yet
Exactly.
he still goes above and beyond, Like, he's literally peak human condition. Like, even Superman has said
And
many
it's not
times,
even,
like, he's the
but
most dangerous man on Earth because of what
yeah.
he could do, especially if unchecked.
Hmm.
Like going back to Under the Red Hood, he's like, if I
Dude,
kill the
Amanda
Joker, I
Waller
will
was
literally
scared
not
of Bruce
stop.
Wayne.
Yeah,
Like in the DCEU, remember that
yeah,
conversation here? She's like, "You should stop working nights," and he's like, "You should like shut down like something, whatever you're up to, or me and my friends will do it for you." And you could clearly tell like one person walked away from that conversation with the upper hand or with more of a
yeah.
sense of like they're gonna follow through and have
He's
the means to do
powerful.
so. It's
He's a
but
powerful
it's
man, and
but like
it just
it's
yeah,
but here's the thing about Batman, right? Like, okay, most people will be like, okay, Batman has the money, Batman has the influence, and that's what makes him special. But it's not that. I think this is where I really love the Christopher Nolan movies because they dove into the psyche of the character in a
yeah.
way that those 80s and 90s Batman movies did not do. Well, and I'm not saying that they
Batman
didn't do it
Forever
at all.
tried to do
They
it, but like
tried,
Warner Brothers
but
wanted a toy commercial instead, while Joel
exactly.
Schumacher wanted to bring that psyche in with
Right.
the whole Red Book subplot and like him
Yeah.
meeting the bat. It's like, or like the whole idea, I'm not Batman because I have to be, but I choose to be. And he's like embracing the side of himself while also kind of reigniting what it means to be Bruce Wayne as well. Unfortunately, that kind of got lost in the final cut. Hashtag release the Schumacher cut. But there was an attempt, don't get me wrong, but yes, obviously Nolan really brought, like, there's a reason why The Dark Knight, and to a slightly lesser extent Batman Begins, The Dark Knight Rises, usually The Dark Knight is the one that everybody loves. Not for everybody,
Dude,
but
I
for the
think
most
both
part,
movies are fantastic. I personally love both
they're
of them.
all for their own
Yeah.
reasons, but it's just like there's a reason why everybody loves these movies, because even though it is the realistic idea of Batman, which can turn off people that like the comic book accuracy, but it still dove into why Batman is such an intriguing character to a lot of people, and even by the end of Dark Knight Rises, why he's an inspirational character. Because a lot of people forget that, because usually, oh, Superman's the inspirational character and Batman isn't. Well, and that's not totally the case. I feel like, I mean, even the whole arc with Matt Reeves's version is like he has to become the beacon of hope, because that's what makes Batman so interesting. He can be a beacon of hope, but he can also be like this terrifying thing. That was another thing in Justice League: The New Frontier, the movie, as well as the original comic book, was like, he's like, I got into this business to scare criminals, not children.
Hmm.
Like, that was like another, like, really, that's why he brought on Robin. That's why he looks more like the Adam West version towards the end of the film. And like, he's like, I got into this business. Yeah, I want to scare the criminal element. I don't want to scare the children. I don't want to scare the innocent, because I'm trying to help and protect them. And it's just like, it just, and it's so funny with like Homelander. It's like, one, who the fuck are you, Anthony Starr? Calm down. You have no clout whatsoever. And second, it's like, you play a Superman knockoff whose weakness is
Hmm.
titty milk. Like, really? Who the fuck are you to say anything about one of the most, like, awe-inspiring, inspirational, well-known characters of all time? Like, who the fuck are you? Like, seriously?
It just the other thing also about the character, that a comment like this is very tone deaf, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, when you look at what he said, like, hey, and it couldn't be more cliche the way he said it. The whole, I always liked him, and then I grew up and realized he was just a
And
dude.
then I grew up.
Like
That's
that.
the thing I fucking hate.
It's
That's
it's
the thing
like
I fucking hate so
because
much.
you miss the layers of the man behind the mask. Because again, like in the Christopher, because that's my favorite trilogy of Batman movies, is the Christopher Nolan trilogy, and quite frankly, The Dark Knight is probably the greatest, one of the greatest, if not the greatest comic book movie of all time.
Mhm.
The pacing of that movie is perfect,
Yeah. Even as a
perfect.
kid, I watched The
It's
Dark Knight like
and
constantly, even though I didn't really get it at the time. I was like,
yeah,
I don't know, 11, 12
it
years old.
just.
But I was just like so enamored with it, just because like
Hmm.
how interesting it was to me. And I wasn't bored with it, even though that movie's, what is it, like two and a
Hmm.
half hours, probably a little bit less. So
And it
yeah,
came out
definitely there's
actually like
history
a
there.
couple of days, 2 days, 16 years, 2 days ago. I think it was like this. Was it this Wednesday? I think it was
I think
16 years
so.
ago. This Wednesday was when The Dark Knight got released, which I think somehow we missed that on the O Security
Yeah,
show.
sorry
But
about that, Dark Knight. Sorry about that,
I mean,
Nolan.
and
It's okay.
I'm like, how did I do that? But look, at the end of when you look at the character of Bruce Wayne, of Batman, it's not just what he does, but why he does it, but also the reasons for why he does it. Like, I think the Nolan movies explored that a lot, because it's comes from a place of selflessness where
Mhm.
he's not pursuing his goal, because it the character has to go through these stages. Like,
Right,
this is where the Batman, I think, has done a good job, where the first they clearly have a long, they're playing the long game. The first
right.
movie was about this young Bruce Wayne who's still going after the idea of revenge, whereas in Batman Begins, you see Christopher Nolan's version of the character that Christian Bale played go through that revenge period and then kind of move beyond it and become this
Move
character
beyond it,
who's
yeah.
like fight for the justice
Although it
and
does kind of
save the city
falter
of
towards
Gotham.
the end, where
It
it's like,
does, yeah. He's like,
I'm not
I'm
gonna
not gonna
kill you,
kill
but I don't have
you,
to
but
save
I don't
you.
have to save
A
you.
little
And
bit
I
rocky,
get
but
it.
it's even then
Yes.
still a great movie.
Yeah.
It's just a little rocky
Yeah.
towards the end, but
Yeah.
that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm not gonna kill you, but I don't have to save you. I have to do the voice. I have to do the voice.
yeah,
But
no, you're
the
good,
other
man.
thing. The other thing about, so clearly he goes through that and then he moves on to the next step. And then what I loved about the Batman and how that movie ends is you go from the idea of his vengeance to he's now looking at himself as a symbol of hope for the people
Right.
around him, because he has the ability to do things that a lot of people don't have the means to do, or
Hmm.
the willpower to do. And I think that's really what makes Batman stand apart. This is where I
Yeah,
think BVS, the opening sequence of Batman versus Superman, was one of the best opening sequences of any. For those first 10 minutes of that movie, it was
yeah.
probably like, I was like, oh my God, am I going to watch the new greatest superhero movie of all time? Because you see
No,
Bruce
but
Wayne.
it tried.
Okay. He's running towards the building
Yeah,
that skyscraper that's falling
right.
down. He's running into the smoke.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, Superman's fighting Zod in the sky, and that goes, and he just doesn't have to do that, obviously, but like he doesn't have his practically invincible Batman armor on. He doesn't
but
have
he's
any of
doing it
his fancy
anyway.
toys,
Yeah,
but he's doing it anyway. And like what he does even after and it goes and gets on the other side of the rubble and he saves the girl, and then essentially he's still trying to take care of his own people. There's this sense of belonging and ownership and
yeah,
accountability that the character of Bruce Wayne brings, which is something unique, especially even though part of it even though he
yeah.
has privilege, I think it goes beyond like what he is
But
as a character. And
and
the Dark Knight Rises really
yeah,
laid into that idea of, you take away Bruce Wayne's privilege, and then and that's what the Bane does. And then what
and
is
he still
Bruce Wayne at
comes
that
back
point?
anyway because
He's
he's
like, you came back to die with your
Batman.
city. It's like, I came back to stop you, and it's the whole
Yeah,
it's very
there's a lot
symbolic
of
of who that
layers
character
there.
is. Yeah.
And it's just like I'm like, it's funny because I liked Batman as a kid because he was cool. That's why a lot of kids,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, that's why a lot of kids like Batman. But the thing is, kids don't understand like the layers. It's usually,
Right.
guy who's like dark brooding of the night versus Superman. Oh, he's a guy who wears his underwear on the outside. That's lame. I'm not saying that's everybody, but and then as I grew up, ironically, like I kind of got out of my fucking like nihilism phase in college and then all that bullshit. And then I'm like, man, I just want to be the good dude that helps everybody like Superman. So that's why I kind of got into that idea more. And then I saw the layers of Superman more and more, and how great of a character he really is. And I just kind of fell in love with like the idea of the man of the Superman, not necessarily the super of the Superman. But now, ironically, with all this Batman hate, I'm kind of going back to Batman a little bit. Even though I don't really totally love every iteration um of like the movies, I like the character, like mainly from like an animated point of view, because usually the animated stuff gets him right while the movies don't really, like, at least from like a total idea. Like, because I mean, you have the famous scene of like Batman like saving Ace,
Mm-hmm.
and towards the end of Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, where Bruce spends the money from Wayne Enterprises to save Nora Freeze, and you have like Batman saving these Robins, not because he wants them to be child soldiers, which I know people will bring up because it's a fucking another bullshit argument, but it's because he sees the pain that like he's like literally Dick Grayson, he sees in him like, I understand like what you're going through. Like and the thing is, he sees that and he's like, I don't want these kids to become me because I know how much of like a broken man I became. And I had no one. Yeah, he had Alfred, but like that was more like, but he still had to like go on this like war torn path. And he's like, I can't let that happen to these kids. Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, eventually Tim Drake, and Carrie Kelly, kind of, not really, but Stephanie Brown is who I meant. And all these characters, Cassandra Cain, like this.
Right.
If we're going outside of the Robins, Cassandra Cain is another great example. And because like literal, and even Damian Wayne, like the whole basis of like Cassandra Cain and Damian Wayne, they were actually literally bred to be child soldiers, to be assassins, to be little weapons. And then when they actually finally meet Batman, yeah, Damian Wayne is still kind of a little shit for a while. He's like, oh, but I don't think I want to, be like that. That's why, like, eventually, like, I remember there was a great arc for Damien. I think it was the teen when he was in charge of the Teen Titans, where he's like seeing himself. He's like, I forget who was talking to him, but it was like, who do you see yourself as? And he sees himself as Ra's al Ghul, and he's like, I don't want to be like that. And then he eventually sees himself as Batman because he's like, that's who I want to be. That's who the man I want to be. I don't want to be this like soldier. I want to be this crusader. But it's like he was so ingrained with this horrible psychology from his grandfather, from his mother, and from the rest of League of Assassins that it's hard to like break away from that. And then Cassandra Cain, like mainly through Batgirl, but as well as Batman. Like Batman eventually like adopted her essentially. Like she was trained from birth to be an assassin to the point where she can't talk. She can't read or write. Like she literally, because the like Lady Shiva, like, oh, that's not important. You have to kill. And then she went out into the field, she killed someone, and being a child, she's like, I don't like how this feels. Can I like not do this? And she had to run away. And then Batman eventually adopted her, and he's like, there's a better way to do this crusade.
Yeah.
You don't have to kill. You don't have to do these things.
Yeah, I think the
And
Watcher has a good point there. Like
yeah,
again, just the motivation behind what Batman does is,
and become
and
better than
it's
me. Yeah.
exactly
So
so that
you also
yeah, it's
have
just
from Young Justice as well. Um you have that idea of, oh, so like Robin needed to bring the man who murdered his family to justice so that he'd turn out like you, so that he wouldn't.
mhm.
Like that's the whole point. That's why I fucking hate Titans so much, because it's just that whole bullshit idea of child soldiers. I know I'm kind of going off on a little bit of a rant, not what Anthony Starr was kind of saying. It just, there's like so many dumbass arguments like, oh, he just beats up mentally ill people. Oh, he doesn't do anything for Gotham. Oh, he doesn't do this. He does this. Blah, 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 blah. It's just like, fucking, can you just pick up a comic and shut the fuck up so you can actually know what you're talking about? It's just so aggravating, and it's just so mind numbing. I hate Batman fans. They can be really fucking annoying sometimes, but these fuckers actually make me feel bad for Batman fans. Like, if this is the rhetoric that they have to deal with, then I'm not surprised that a lot of them are dickheads. Because it's like, I'd be a dickhead too if I had to fucking hear all this shit constantly. Like, it's just. And then don't get me started on Eric Kripke's bullshit. Oh, Batman's a fascist. Batman is like, he just beats up poor people, and he's just like a rich guy who
I
beats up poor
I
people. And it's
don't
just like,
that
why
comment.
are
I don't
you
even get where
talking?
that's coming from. Like I don't get that at all. It just
It's just
it's
so mind numbing. It's so
yeah. I mean,
mind numbing at
plus
this
like I
point.
think you mentioned something before the show. I'm like this. What really got me about this? What really set me off is on top of that is like again. putting into context, Anthony Starr probably said some of this just to draw a reaction. And he was probably, maybe he wasn't even entirely serious, but let's just, all we can do is take the words at face value, and you could tell it comes across as being very ignorant and quite frankly
Hmm.
disrespectful, because the comic book genre today is exists because it's the house that Batman built. Quite frankly,
Hmm.
Batman has grossed more consistently. It may not have grossed the most amount of money at this point at the box office because Warner Brothers kind of had it in the dumpster for like a good 8 years because they couldn't. I mean, but even then, Batman versus Superman made almost $1 billion, despite the fact that it was universally panned by critics. But
Hmm.
Batman is, from Michael Keaton's Batman all the way to Robert Pattinson's Batman. We have had, movies that have constantly, not only, made money, but been, just staples of the genre, but have also not just, they've elevated the genre. If you look at the amount of Oscars that the Batman franchise has got, it's got one for Heath Ledger, one for Joaquin Phoenix, and I think it's got a couple more for VFX as well. So it's like,
Yeah.
and then the first Suicide Squad movie that included a lot of Batman, adjacent characters, and Ben Affleck's Batman won an Oscar for best hair and makeup. So it's not only elevated the genre in terms of like the mainstream, but also from the financial standpoint. And when you look at the just what the character means to comic book fandom, even if you're not a fan of the character by directly, but what it means to the larger comic book sphere of entertainment and pop culture. Homelander and the boys are like down here, and Batman is like on a whole different level. And I think you said something before the show that really got me, because I'm like, you know what? That is exactly what makes this comment even more annoying, because the boys is not exactly highbrow.
It's not. It's
It's
really
like
not.
it's not deconstructionist
It's not.
in a way that it pretends to be sometimes. It's just gory and dumb, and it just sometimes nihilistic for the sake of being nihilistic,
Oh
and
yeah.
gory for the sake of being gory, and it's
The
it's
thing
it's
is,
almost
I
like it's
don't mind,
pretending
and
to
I don't
be
mind
something that it's
nihilism
not.
either, as long as you're
Yeah,
doing something interesting with it.
if
Like for
if
instance,
you
my
tell an effective story.
literally
Yeah,
my favorite movie of all time is John Carpenter's The Thing, and that
yeah,
is all about the nihilistic view of aliens and that whole story. So like I don't mind it as long as you do something interesting with it. But this is, as you said, it's just shock value. It's just like it's a show written by 13-year-olds and for 13-year-olds. It's like that's if you could get lower than Zack Snyder, Eric Kripke is right there. Like that's what it essentially is. Like people won't bitch and whine that Zack Snyder didn't understand superheroes, and that is very true. But if you can get lower than that, it's Eric Kripke, like who like literally does not understand these characters at all. And and with that, like you, the thing is you have to at least have some understanding of the characters you're portraying to an extent. Like obviously you don't have to read every Superman comic ever read or ever made to like do Homelander. Like I understand that, but it's like it reminds me, I think it was one of the writers of like the the Star Trek trilogies, Wrath
mm-hmm.
of Khan, Search for Spock, and Voyage Home, where he's like, okay, I know nothing about Star Trek. I'm
Right,
literally going to watch the entirety of the original series so I can understand Star Trek to write it properly.
exactly.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
what a thought. Actually steeping yourself in the franchise and the lore so you
Right,
actually know what you're fucking talking about.
yeah,
Crazy, So, and it's just it just comes off as like tiring, and it's just like old man yells at cloud, actor yells at Hollywood, and it's just like I don't care. Like I don't care what you're saying because you live in a bubble. You don't know what the
mm-hmm.
fuck you're talking about.
Exactly,
Like
yeah.
once you become like an actor with enough clout, you just kind of get sucked into a bubble, and you don't you have no right to really say anything about anything
It
because
just yeah,
you're
and
not
it's not like,
a
and
person
honestly,
anymore.
again, Anthony Starr
Unless
might
you're
be a
Keanu
fantastic
Reeves.
human being, but like, dude, you don't have a resume to be making these kind of comments. I mean,
No.
people go after Martin Scorsese when he says that Marvel movies are roller coaster, they're amusement park rides, It's rightfully so, because like this happens more often than we'd like to imagine. And sometimes, people get asked a question and they may just say something off the cuff, and maybe later on they'll think about it. But when you're in the public view and you are a public figure, and especially when you're attached to the genre, and you can't just go out there and say something so ignorant and then not know. Because again, I feel like he's probably done this partly to get the attention that
Yeah,
clearly he has gotten out of the show. For example, we've been talking about it for the last freaking half an hour, but even still, it just I think it's just in bad taste. It's really in
yeah.
bad taste, and
Especially where you're coming from. It's
yeah,
like you're bad mouthing this character who's had 80 years of history,
yeah,
who has all these layers, has all this intrigue, and you're playing a character that's had 4 seasons of a show and like 80 issues of a comic book in like the mid 2000s. And it's just like, who are you? Like, who the fuck are
hmm
you? So I don't know. It just comes off as
yeah. Maybe like
yeah,
what the
that's essentially what
penguin,
it
like
is.
with the New Jersey accent. Who the fuck are you? I
Who,
don't know. I
yeah,
can't do it. I
it's
can't do
and
it.
that's what it is. That's why I stopped watching the show, mainly because of that. Is like it
Mhm.
just became it was a show that literally existed because it was shocking. Look at all the gore. Look at all the look at the orgy going on. Look, it has penises, it has cum, it has vagina, it has titties. Look at how fucking like cool we are, right? And then so it's that's what it is, and that's all it is. But the thing is, it acts like it's Watchmen, like it's actually like or something like Watchmen is kind of the best thing to because that was like the most popular deconstructionist superhero story of all time. Like what would happen if real life politics and
Right.
real life situations that happen in our world would that be affected by superheroes, and how those things would affect the superheroes who have no powers outside of Dr. Manhattan. So it's like how would we react? How would we do this? And that was it, which is ironic considering Alan Moore is one of the dumbasses that spouts that like superheroes are innately white supremacists. It's ironic, but like,
I don't get that. I don't know.
I don't get that. But Alan
Let's
Moore's
not
a
even.
fucking
I don't even
moron.
want to go
So
down
like,
that route because it's so far off the mark. But
yeah,
anyway,
Alan Moore is the pinnacle of old man yells at clouds. So like that's beside the point. But what I'm trying to say is like it's just like don't act like you're more than what you are. And the boys acts like it's this in-depth
yeah.
deconstructionist idea of the superheroes when it's just like, oh hey, what if the Justice League were assholes? That's
Yeah.
literally all it is. Insert
And you know
some
what? I will
dicks,
give it
cum,
credit.
and
There
blood,
are
and then boom, there
moments.
you go.
Yeah, like and sorry to talk over you, but like there
No,
are
no, you're good.
moments where the show hits like a tune that sings.
Yeah,
Like there are times where you get to see like, okay, there is more to it than just shock value. But you still, when you kind of take a step back and really look at it as a whole, it still leans too heavily on like the shock value and just the gore and doing things for the sake of doing things to be like, oh my god, like it's and it just, to me, it got again, it's everybody can, if you love the show, no need to yuck in anybody else's yum, but everybody
yeah.
has their own opinion and art is subjective. But I personally just like don't think there's
It's just very
as much
superficial.
to the show. And I feel like it's some of the best things this show has to say. It's already said, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why I think,
And
yeah,
there's still gonna be
Manolo,
another
your comment
season
was,
where it's just
yeah,
like,
like
ugh.
it just now it seems like people watch the show because they're like, let's see exactly how far they're gonna go, what
Yeah,
new, unexpectedly gory or out there thing they're gonna do this season.
yeah,
And
essentially.
I I don't I just don't know where the show has to go anymore. It just,
It's like if
and
it
while
has
the show
nothing to
is
offer me,
better
then like
than the comics,
how much more blood and
eh,
dismemberment are they going to give us? It's like
yeah,
that's not why I want to watch a show. I want to watch like a show for like in-depth like intrigue, like having something to say, or just having that innately like interesting of a
yeah.
story that I'm just like hooked, and like I'm interested in every single character decision or every single story progression that I'm like intrigued with like every bit as to why, as well as the destination. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested in the journey. That's the whole point of a TV series, why it's longer form. It's
Yeah.
you're interested in that journey, and the destination. You're from A to B. If I want to watch why would I want to watch a show just for the B? I don't want to watch it just for the B, just for the destination. Like, okay, how many more dicks and vaginas are we gonna put in the show? All right, cool.
Yeah.
If I want to watch that, I will watch actual porn, which probably has more in-depth shit than this fucking show will ever have. I swear, The Boys XXX has more layers to it than this fucking shit ever will. So, like, it's just like I don't care. I don't care. And it's like, oh yeah, we're trying to say something. You're not trying to say anything, so I don't give a fuck. I don't care. Make me care. Well. Butts. Okay, cool. When Doom Patrol did it, it was funny, but when you're doing it, it's boring. So get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, what Anthony Starr said here is at best baiting, people to just react the way we quite frankly did, and at worst, just, utterly ignorant and very disrespectful. But that's not the only thing we were here to talk about today, John. There is more to talk about. And let's kind of like switch gears now and let's talk a little bit about Superman, right? Tell us a little bit about what's going on here with Twister's director, Isaac Lee Chung, I think, or Lee Isaac Chung. I forget the full name. He's directed David Corenswet in Twisters, and he was about to be cast in the movie Superman to be Superman, and basically over the course of the filming of Twisters, everybody was rooting for David Corenswet to get the role, and then he finally, of course, landed the role. And now he's been talking about how everybody was in their corner, but give us a little more insight into what that must have been like. And then of course this article kind of dives into it a little bit. But if you were David Corenswet, you were filming Twisters, but you're about to possibly land the role of a lifetime. What does that feel like, and how would you be rooting for him in that moment as well, much like the director and the entire cast, I'm sure, of Twisters did?
I think everyone kind of did. There's a quote later on in the article, maybe you could scroll down and show it, but he was essentially like, yeah, it just makes sense that this guy would play Superman. Like, literally, like, everyone I have seen with this guy, I think Ty West I think he might have said something. I think Mia Goth said something. Jack Quaid, speaking of The Boys, said something. They're like, when they were like, oh yeah, this guy's trying out for Superman, and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, that's like literally everyone you've ever worked with are like, oh yeah, he's literally perfect as the most inspirational character that has ever existed. That's saying a fucking lot. And it makes me more pumped because even if the movie sucks, I will guarantee you David Cornswood is going to be amazing. He might be it's a lot, and I don't mean to pressure the man, but we might be getting another Christopher Reeve. That might be the case, just of how fucking innately fantastic he could be. I think Jack Quaid also auditioned for the role of Superman, and he had worked with David Corenswet on something, and he's like, yeah, we were all expecting it at some point. And that's just really fucking awesome. And in what he says, Chang or Chuang, or I forget his name, he's like, I feel James Gunn really lucked out finding this guy because he's gonna kill it. And it's just like, imagine having everyone in your corner playing the most famous character ever, like him, along with Batman and Spider-Man in terms of comic book characters. That's really fucking cool, and I wish him the best. And he's just like, I hope he's gonna kill it. Like, as he said, he's gonna kill it. And I don't know, I'm just still kind of in awe of oh yeah, we all expected that from him. We all expected him to play Superman because of just how awesome he is. And and it brings like the fan casting into light a little bit, where people were just kind of casting him because like, oh yeah, he kind of looks like a younger Henry Cavill. Isn't
Right.
that interesting? But then it just turns out it's like, no, he's actually a really awesome dude. He's a really good actor, and he just looks the part. And everyone you've ever worked with, you're like, yeah, I can't see anybody else. If you say his name, I can't see anyone else as Superman. That's just fucking awesome, man. I know I keep saying that, but that's just so fucking
It's
awesome.
he was a fan cast for a long time,
A
and not
long
only
time.
that, but okay, to me, what speaks volumes about David Corenswet as a person, no less an actor, we have gotten multiple cast photos over the course of production on this movie, and there's always something I notice, which is I can never find David Corenswet in the picture. He's you never see him. It's just or like you don't notice him because he's never in the front of the image. He's never in an area where you're
Well,
like
except
your
here,
eyes.
but
He's like well, but I'm getting to it right. Like, but up until this picture where Nathan Fillion has to literally walk up behind the dude and be like, like, and he's right there. But in every other photo, it's almost like he purposefully is trying to fly under the radar, which I think
I don't
speaks
know. I'm just looking
to.
at that steak. I'm just like, damn, that looks fucking good. Like that
He's just
the big
he's
guy who
humble. I
has
think
the
that
fucking
that that
medium rare
matters.
steak, that looks
Yeah.
fucking good, man. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, it just speaks volume. I think to volumes to the person he is, and I think again that ties back to just how proud the Twisters cast the director are um, of David Cornsweet just landing this role, the role of a lifetime. Um, but yeah, I mean, speaking of which, actually, I wanted to ask you.
Hmm.
Um, you already brought this up.
Yeah.
With all the pictures we have seen, all the behind the scenes stuff we have seen, the comment from the watcher, uh, that's high praise. That's high. That's a high bar. Robert Downey Jr. of the
Hmm.
DC, as in like as perfect a casting for Superman as RDJ was for Iron Man. Do you think we can get to that level? Do we? Because for a lot of people, Christopher Reeve is still the definitive Superman. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who are from the younger generation who will look at Henry Cavill as that. Do you think David
Yeah.
Cornsweet can kind of come in? Because it's sort of a similar situation to Robert Pattinson, who comes in playing Batman at a time where people have grown up with two, three, maybe even more other iterations of Batman who they feel are definitive, and he has to sort of create his own mark on the character, make
Legacy,
his own
yeah.
mark on the character. Do you think David Cornsweet has that potential?
I think so. Because I feel like if he stays true to those values and James Gunn stays true to those values that we want to see with this character, then I think he's going to be just another iteration of like every great like I still stand by we have never gotten a bad Superman like from what I've seen. Like even like Kirk Allen in like the silent era, even when there wasn't a lot to the character at the time, he, embodied what Superman was at the time and more simple, but still great.
Yeah.
And then, we had like George Reeves is still like beloved, like on television. A lot of people still love Dean Cain. And, it's just, it'll just be another great iteration. Like I know a lot of people who have actually watched the show, and not a ton of people watch the show because it's a TV show, it's CW, it's Arrowverse, but Tyler Hoechlin has just been a new favorite among many. And even though they have so little in terms of it being a show and not a lot of budget, even though it is a co-production between Max and CW, it just shows that like yeah, he killed it. Even though in the first season it looks like he's wearing a costume from like Spirit Halloween, but like that's okay. Sometimes it's not always about the aesthetics, but he um he did a lot right because it's like his like even if the writing sucked like with Cavill and to an extent Brandon Routh, but there's like moments where it's like, oh yeah, that's Superman. Like even in the best, like Brandon Routh, like there was that really great line where it was like, I know you, where he was talking with Lois, and he's like, I know you told the world that it doesn't need a hero, but all I hear is people screaming for one. Like, that's a great fucking line, and it was such a garbage ass movie. Well, not garbage. I think it had its moments, but it was like, it just like, it's just like, it's like not it's not a Superman movie. It's a tribute to a Superman movie, and not even a good one at that, even as my friend always says. But it still had those moments of like, you could have been so excellent if the writing didn't fail you and like what they were trying to do, which is funny because Michael Dougherty is a great writer. Like, his directorial efforts have been great, and a lot of his writing efforts were fantastic. So the fact that he dropped the ball is like, damn, fluke, because he's great. But it's still like, if like maybe Michael Dougherty, if he like channeled something, we could have gotten something better. But yeah, it's just like, I feel like yeah, because you fucking had Pepper Potts played by fucking Gwyneth Paltrow. But and James Gunn did sell us on like the Lois and Clark relationship. Like, the reason I chose these two is because their chemistry was electric. Um, I think it made everybody cry. Like, because it reminds me of the Brazilian Superman. I forget his
Mhm.
name. I think Leonard Mayer, Mayar. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Portuguese. So, but he's really got, like, I love seeing videos of him where he's just going through the streets, just high fiving people, just hugging people, just being a cool ass dude. He better have a cameo in the sequel, James Gunn. All right, like, okay, you have Will Reeve here, cool. You got to have Brazilian Superman be in the sequel, because we all need to see that in a Superman movie. Because like, whether he's like being saved by Superman or they're gonna bleed it into the canon, like, even though Superman actually exists in this world, he's still just a random guy who's like in a Superman outfit just helping people because he's a cool dude. So, whatever they do with that, they got to have him cameo. But it's just like, and I loved the scene where it was like, Guy Gardner being like, "It's okay, guys," and like the kids are running up to him, and it's just showing. I hope it's like a scene where it's like, it's a lull between like the threats, and I hope you see um like the other characters see, the heroes see, um like, they turn and they just see all these kids like being,
Just in awe of Superman.
hugged, like
Like
being in
it's
awe of
yeah.
Superman and like oh my god, that's fucking perfect. That's amazing. Anyway, um even if it's, Superman Returns, it's okay. It's like, perfect. Anyway, um but it just like in awe of like how loved he is, and it just like seeing how what he can do, like, when he's just being just a farm boy from Kansas, just trying to do the right thing. And that I hope that's like, I know people keep saying like, yeah, this is just great. And I people keep saying that, James Gunn kind of keeps saying that, where it's like that'll be a major part of the film. I just really hope it is, where it's just, especially in a movie coming out with so many generations becoming like anti-corporation. Like,
Mhm.
as long as it's done well, like, I hate things to get like super social and political for little reason, but if it's like if it's like these heroes who are funded by a corporation realizing that it's like not necessarily being anti-establishment, just like being like just like a guy who wants to do the right thing, like genuinely just wants to do the right thing, that then it'll automatically succeed. Like, and it's just like Superman just like helping the kids, and you know it just it, it's enough to make a grown man cry, as um the character from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs would say. So I just hope that that's a major factor. Like, I know they keep saying it, but James Gunn can lie. Like, maybe he's just saying that and then it's not actually, and then, but I just hope it is. I really really hope it
Mhm.
is. Saving squirrels out of trees.
By the way, I don't know if Kamal Nanjiani is gonna be Booster Gold, and I don't know how well to
Mm,
believe Daniel RPK. Take it with a grain of salt, Watcher, because it's until it's confirmed by James Gunn, it's not. We can't really say it's true or not. It's he has a good hit rate, but he doesn't always hit with everything. So we'll just take a step back and, like you said, take it with a grain of
yeah.
salt. But yeah, it's dude, it's so yeah, it's Superman. Just I think when James Gunn describes what he wanted to see get out of this movie, the type of character, the version of Superman, where Superman is essentially um, kindness in a world that thinks of kindness as old fashioned. I think I'm paraphrasing, and that is, I think, just that if that's the kernel at the core of what that character is in this movie, then
Hmm.
I think they've done their job. They've hit the mark. That's exactly what Superman is, has been, and should always be, right? So I really love that the idea that that's driving all the creative decisions that James Gunn is making with this movie. But hey, there's more to the Superman news than just talking about David Corenswet being cast in the role of a lifetime. Of course,
Hmm.
Christopher Reeve, the one of, if not maybe the greatest Superman of all time. His son, Will Reeve, who is a real life reporter for ABC News, he got to cameo. He got to film a cameo for this movie,
Hmm.
and he's going to be in there playing a reporter in the movie. We've
Hmm.
seen behind the scenes videos of that, pictures of him being on set. Um, and recently, he was asked about that experience. And John, what did he have to say? I think it was just amazing to see and so
Yeah.
heartwarming to see that the Reeves family is back in the fold, because they haven't really always been pulled in. They weren't really brought in to consult for the Christopher Reeves cameo, the all CGI cameo in The Flash. But James Gunn seems to, not only is there a new
Don't get
documentary
me
that Warner
started
Brothers
on
has
that, man.
done.
Don't get me into another
I'm
rant
just
about
saying,
that. Like,
James Gunn has really gone a long way to kind of right the wrongs of years past at where Warner Brothers were
yes.
seemingly leaving a lot of these folks, out in the wild. Whereas, it should be, they should all be completely just like one big family.
Your brother never told you never threaten a man's family?
Because Superman would probably like that cheesy joke, I will let it slide for now. So it's okay.
But what did you think about Will Reeves' comments on his
Yeah,
cameo
he
in the
was
movie?
like, it was funny because he was like, I was actually really nervous, even though it was just one line, because it was just there was a lot of people around, and it was like it made me really nervous. But he's like, it was still a great experience. It was quick and fun, and it was easy. So it was like, hell yeah, like let's go. Um, but yeah, it's just really nice, like that. I don't know, just that commemoration and all of that, and you know, just like I know a lot of people. I complained, and I still kind of complain about it. Just don't let it be too reliant on Christopher Reeve, because it's like people have made the argument where it's like you're not letting that go, you're not moving beyond that, because you have like you're using Otis and Eve Tessmacher as characters, you're using Lex Luthor as the villain again when three out of the four movies used Lex Luthor as the villain. So it's a little like iffy, but it's like if you're making a great superhero story outside of that, then I'm all for it. Then do what you need to do. But it's just like it's a little worrisome. It's like don't get too reliant on Christopher Reeve, because it just shows it's like, oh, you can't do anything outside of that. And the last thing I want is to prove the haters wrong, because fuck the haters. But even then, I think this will do a lot right outside of that. I just don't hope it just isn't so reliant, just a little thing I have in the back of my head watching this, even though it's very nice. It's like Will Reeve coming in and all that. Just like, don't let it get too crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Be
I
your
mean,
be your own Superman.
exactly. Well, I think we mentioned this at the time when these pictures came out, that hey, while this is great to see, we don't want to have this movie become a cameo fest. We don't
Right.
ever want to have cameos for the sake of cameos. Small kind of nods like this, I think, are perfect. That's a great cameo where he's just in there for the little moment. Some people, they won't know who he is. Some people will do, and then those of us who do will appreciate it. And he's
Hmm.
not necessarily there to distract, but he's there to kind of add to the story.
Yeah.
It just happens to be that he is Will Reeve, son of Christopher Reeve, who a lot of us still think is the best Superman of all time. as opposed to just being, you know, Anderson Cooper or Wolf Blitzer or whoever
Right.
else. Like, you know, they're
Oh
usually
God,
bringing.
no! Please don't have that.
I think
Superman's a
that to me is
terrorist.
more distracting than this would be, because like I have to like wait see Anderson Cooper describe how the downtown metropolis is empty because it's the evening and everybody is based. The business district is completely empty and there's nobody there, so no civilians will get hurt while Wonder Woman makes her way out of the Turkish Airlines flight that sponsors the movie and goes to, you know, fight Doomsday. So it's way more distracting if you have that versus just like Will Reeve just shows up as just a reporter reporting on all the, you know, the action going on and all the destruction, whatever monster Superman is fighting alongside the Justice League International team. I appreciate it. I think what he said here. I know the folks making the film, and they've been so kind to me and my family, and I had a free day, so we made it happen. I think that's perfect. This is exactly the kind of cameo I want to see, and I hope that a lot of the cameos in Deadpool and Wolverine, different movie, but I hope more of those cameos feel like that in that movie than the ones where, kind of like what Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was. So, yeah. Oh, by the way, Joji just stopped in. Welcome to the show. And he was dropping a comment about the boys as well. I'm gonna put this up. I think he's making another point that a lot of us were making earlier, which is the whole idea that the show has sort of devolved a little bit into just
Yeah.
relying on shock value more than anything else.
Exactly.
Whereas it has some moments, I think overall the show doesn't. And yeah, I mean, Anthony Starr shouldn't have said what he said about Batman at the end of the day. I don't think it was the best idea. But hey, let's move on to the next thing, which is, as we always do on the show, we usually like to end with a comment from one of you guys. And on this show, we're going to talk about JB
Big comment.
1138.
That's why we have no other ones, because this was a very big one from
big comment.
a regular.
And in fact, it's such a big comment. There's not just one side note. There's two side notes to this comment. So we're gonna address all the points. But basically, yesterday we were talking about Peacemaker set photos. We were talking about Superman filming at Union Terminal in Cincinnati, and JB 1138. He obviously watched the episode, and he decided to kind of give us his opinion. John, do you want to go through the first part of this? It's such a long comment.
He talked about filming in Georgia versus Canada, British Columbia, Canada specifically. And I agree. I don't know if I can. Thing is, I've watched enough Arrowverse to know, like because he makes this statement later on, but I'll leave that for later. But I can kind of tell a little bit, because it's just kind of generic buildings. Like you can tell, like Supergirl going from CBS, which was filmed in LA, to the CW filmed in British Columbia, Vancouver. You can tell. You can definitely tell. And
it looks different. And while I will say boring.
Though, like it's kind of it's filmed in gloomy British Columbia, Canada.
But that's not the only thing. You can easily, like, there's a lot more shot in Canada than most people realize, and it's not just because of the financial incentives. There's other reasons, of course, as well, because getting permits and just the way things work in LA and in New York, like these big hubs, it's very different. It's more from a production standpoint. Sometimes it's not just cheaper, but it's also logistically just a lot easier to set up shop at in let's say British Columbia, in the Vancouver area, or if you're on the eastern side, you might maybe even near the Toronto area. But still, there's a lot of show. Having said that, there's tons of shows and movies that still film in LA and Atlanta and Georgia, and I think Georgia has been a big production hub for a long time now. Marvel basically owns Disney has an ownership stake in the biggest studio that has all these sound stages in I'm forgetting the name right now, but they are based in Atlanta, and Marvel basically does a lot of their filming there. On that back lot, in addition to what they do in London, like where they're doing Fantastic Four right now, and of course Warner Brothers also does a lot of shooting in the Georgia area and in the greater Atlanta area, as well as London, and the Leaves and studios that are getting expanded for DC Studios to have a bigger presence. I think it all comes down to what's going to be the best for your production. Like we have been talking about it endlessly, how Superman got an $11 million tax credit from the Greater Cleveland Film Commission, which if you do the math on what qualified them for that much money, they must have spent at least $37 million, if not more, on the 6 weeks that they shot in Cleveland, which I can see the money where the money was going. Clearly, I think they put that money to good use for sure. And then of course they're still spending more money filming in Cincinnati as well. So those tax credits may not have been available elsewhere. It's also, you know, the significance of shooting Superman sequences and having Cleveland stand in for Metropolis, where Cleveland is literally the birthplace of the Superman character itself. It's is great, but you know, from a producer standpoint, the money part of it obviously comes into play. The logistics of it comes into play. You don't want to be filming somewhere that is hard to get to, where it's going to be hard for you to be able to put up your cast and crew. And so locate, you know, proximity matters. British Columbia is just close enough to LA that you're not flying across the country, so it's easy to kind of like shuttle, you know, back and forth, especially like executives or some if producers need to be, you know, back in LA for meetings and then, you know, be up there. Somebody like James Gunn might have to step off set every once in a while as well. So it works, and you know, it's a lot cheaper, but it's also a lot simpler to get you know permits to shoot in Vancouver than it is to shoot in the greater LA area. But yeah, I mean, there's more to the comment than that, of course.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
He was saying, like, I don't know about you guys. I can always spot when a film or show is shot in Canada. There's a few things that make it usually gloomy, raining, Canada, of course. Yeah, and he mainly is mentioning the weather, the gloominess of Vancouver, how Toronto's a little bit better, which yeah, I can see. Yeah, and a lot of things are still filmed in California or New York, but when they're not, it's usually Canada. Wonder how much Georgia is going to disrupt the Canadian film industry. Marvel shoots there. Now DC shooting there too. What other shows are movies going to shoot in Georgia? I know, like, I feel like a lot of things. I just feel like,
dude, Superman was shooting on a soundstage in Atlanta for the longest time. Remember, like that's where they were, that's probably where that first official photo of Superman came from. So that's still.
It's a lot, and it I don't know if it's gonna disrupt anything major because a lot of like the cheaper networks are probably gonna still film in Canada, especially like cable shows, network shows. Network shows like NBC, CBS, who like film in like New York and California, and they can't afford it, so they film in. So you still have a lot of those shows. So I think that's what they're kind of going for. There, so I don't think it's going to disrupt anything major. Maybe in like a television sense. I mean, sure, you have Peacemaker and you have a couple, but I feel like it's not going to disrupt anything major. I think Canada is still going to have a major production industry there because like a lot of the cheapest shows who don't have a budget are going to be shooting there. Meanwhile, you have Marvel money, you have Disney money, and you have Warner Brothers / Discovery money, which is a lot of money, even if Warner Brothers is in debt. But they have a lot of big studio backing stuff, so they're gonna take advantage of that and really do this properly. And so I think like a lot of cheaper stuff that's going to still film in like Vancouver and British Columbia, Toronto, all that. So I don't think it's going to disrupt anything, as you mentioned, but it's something to think about, I guess. You know?
It's also, again, it doesn't even just have to be the cheap stuff too, because for example, I think The Expanse, which was one of the best sci-fi TV shows, you know, ever made, but certainly one of the best when it was on air, it had a big presence in Vancouver, and the production values of that show are top notch. It's you can also look at other examples, like I think all the Chicago shows on NBC, they're shot in Chicago. There's an entire studio like backlot that was built there that is almost completely, you know, financed by the revenue that they get from all the Chicago shows, all the Dick Wolf shows that he produces. Atlanta has been a big hub for Marvel. You know, for DC, the things kind of are spread out a little bit. They shoot, you know, all over, but they have a big hub in London. London's, of course, iconic for where Star Wars were shot. It's where the Harry Potter movies were shot on the Leavesden Studios. DC is gonna go and shoot some stuff there. Marvel has their own, like Disney has their own presence there. So like Fantastic Four is filming. So it all comes down to, you know, which movie has the best incentives to shoot in a particular city and where they're gonna get the best tax credits and the best. Because when you're spending,
as long as they don't fuck it up like Swamp Thing with North Carolina, they should be Gucci.
Dude, I have no idea. I don't know. I still to this day, well, die on a hill that the reason why that show went under was not because they messed up the tax credits. Because it just, to me, makes
Interesting.
absolutely
Theory
no
time.
sense how some producer literally screwed up
Didn't
that
put an
bad that
extra
was.
zero down, and that's why
I
they
don't
didn't
get
get
it.
renewed.
I don't
Like
get it.
it's
I mean, but then again, there's incompetence like that happens at the highest of levels. I remember as a Manchester United fan, once upon a time, David De Gea's transfer to Real Madrid didn't happen because the fax didn't go through on time before the transfer deadline expired. And you're like, of all the things in the 21st century, a fax didn't
who
go
the
through
fuck is still
caused
using fax
a
machines?
deal for millions of dollars to fall through. I don't know, but so it's possible. But hey, JB1138, great comment. I think again, just kind of talking about the business and the behind the scenes of filmmaking. Shooting in Vancouver versus shooting in Georgia, I don't know how much that's going to play into the setting of Peacemaker and what it means for the show's story, but the look of the show will probably be fairly consistent. Although the fact that this is meant to be a new universe, a different universe than the first season, they have an in story reason for it looking different enough that it doesn't look quite the same, but maybe similar. So thematically, it will work, and I'm into it. But hey, we had so much to talk about today, John.
Yeah.
Whether it was Anthony Starr's
Stupidity or
yeah, or
more hopeful
or just
things.
the gratitude of the Reeves family. Will Reeve being cameoing in the new Superman movie, and of course we also discussed just how excited everybody was for David Corenswet on the set of Twisters when he was cast as Superman, as they should be, and I'm sure he was excited too. And it certainly looks like he's somebody, and from the sounds of it, that he commits to the role no matter what he's doing. And while he might not be a method actor, you could tell that
Thank God.
he puts his all into it. Thank God. And yeah, I mean, hey, look, James Gunn definitely has, I think, a really really good pick here for the character of Superman, and we hope to see it come to life and come together on screen. They're shooting in Cincinnati right now.
We're on to Cincinnati.
We're on to Cincinnati.
Well, you think having a 37-year-old...
We're on to Cincinnati. It's nothing about the past, nothing about the future. It's right now we're preparing for Cincinnati.
Okay, do you feel like the talent you have here is good enough?
We're getting ready for Cincinnati. We got to turn the page. I mean, we're going to sit there and talk about
Sorry. Ron, by the way, is back, and he's like, yeah, she's totally looking at his junk. I mean, could be. We did talk about that when this photo first came out. It's just unfortunate that one military extra ends up in the middle of the picture. He's the one guy that doesn't belong. I did see the behind the scenes video of this, and you could clearly tell that Lois Lane and Superman and Clark Kent have some level of understanding, because I think some of this was part of a take, like where they're walking together. So it's not like they're complete strangers to each other at this point in the movie. And of course, you've seen some other behind the scenes prep work where we might get that Superman and Lois Lane sort of floating up in the air, sort of a sequence, whether it's in an indoor setting or an outdoor setting. That would be fun to see. I'm really looking forward to that. But John, what's next on our deck? I know it's a busy month. Are you looking forward to Comic-Con?
Yeah, I'm excited for announcements, clips, various different things.
Are there going to be any surprises? Is there a surprise? If you were to, let's just pretend there's going to be at least one surprise from DC at Comic-Con, and if that is to be the case, then what do you think that surprise is?
They will metaphorically bring Harley Quinn on stage and shoot her in the head. That would make me very happy. But outside of that, I can't really see any surprises.
Why do you go always so dark? I'm sorry. Okay, anyway, that's just not a very family friendly thing to do.
I don't have friends. I got family.
Well, Harley Quinn can suck on this family. Boom. There you go. I'm just kidding. I'm sure Lady Gaga will be great, but outside of that, I don't care.
That would be fun. That would be interesting if Lady Gaga shows up. I know okay, there is a rumor that there's going to be a new trailer coming out on Tuesday,
next Tuesday,
so we'll keep an eye out
23rd,
for that.
So that's good. That could be really fun. I hope it doesn't show too much, but I'm still excited for it because it looks fun.
Dude, if that first trailer is the only trailer that exists before the movie comes out, I'm sold. That trailer was perfect. It was perfect. But yeah, guys, hey, it's been another fantastic week with DCU Daily. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching. We will be back on Monday with more movie news, more movie reviews, more insight, more analysis, and of course, we will be following the production of Superman. Any new pictures and videos that we find from whether it's Cincinnati or whichever other location they might be filming at next week, we will dive into that. We will break it down. We will get into your fan theories. We will go over your comments. And of course, thanks for hashing it up in the live chat with us. Hit the like button if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell if you have subscribed. And if you have not subscribed, what are you doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, and then hit the notification bell so you know when we go live with a new show or when we have a new video going up. We will have a new Also Curious show to start the week off next week, and then we'll of course have another episode of DCU Daily coming your way Monday through Friday. The latest breaking news, analysis, reviews. John is gonna go watch Kite Man, hell yeah, and then hopefully we can talk about that. The first 2 episodes, and then of course another episode will drop next week, so we will get into that. We have Batman Caped Crusader coming out soon, and of course if Anthony Starr slips up again and decides to take on Batman for whatever reason, then we will put him back in his place once again. But until then, until next week, until next time on the show, John, it's been fantastic having you here, and thanks to everybody watching. It's been fantastic having you here,
except however the fucking 38% of people that said Homelander would beat Batman. Fuck you.
Yeah,
but
I
needed to call them out. I needed to call them out.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
Literally, even though I hate this argument, prep time 1, 2. His weakness is titty milk. Okay, get that the fuck out of here. All right,
you know what? That's not even the hardest thing for Batman to find. I'm just saying.
Woman. That's all.
That's all. Okay, and on that bombshell, it's time to end the show. We will see you guys next week. Until then, have a fantastic weekend. Go watch something DC related, and then come back to us and talk to us about it. Until next time, John, have a great weekend, and fuck Homelander.